I have been handed a plea agreement in this case. Mr. White, the court wants to review this plea agreement with you. I recognize you've had time to consult with your attorney on this, but I will go through this plea agreement to make sure there's no misunderstandings, and then we will proceed with the change of plea. The plea agreement that I've been handed, we made copies for part of you guys, counsel have copies. It indicates that in this case, case number CR 2016-13197, the defendant will plead guilty to the charge of murder in the second degree as charged. The defendant specifically agrees to give a full disclosure interview between the time of the change of plea and sentencing with the Bonneville County detectives regarding the circumstances surrounding this crime. Pursuant to Idaho Criminal Rule F1C, in consideration for the defendant giving a full disclosure interview regarding the circumstances surrounding this offense, the parties jointly agree that the sentence shall be 45 years with 15 years fixed and 30 years indeterminate. The defendant also agrees that all no contact orders currently in effect shall remain in effect for the duration of the sentence unless otherwise modified by the court. The defendant agrees to pay restitution. All other conditions not expressly agreed upon, the parties are free to argue as they see fit. Can I have counsel approach? I just want to confer with counsel, Mr. White. In the plea agreement, it's done pursuant to Idaho Criminal Rule F1C, which is a binding plea agreement. However, the heading of the paragraph says this agreement is not binding. So the court is going to strike the term not binding. It's intended by the parties, and that's what I wanted to confirm with counsel. This agreement is considered binding upon the court, and we'll talk about what that means and make sure you understand that as we proceed through with this. The court's going to initial that as being a change, but is that correct, Mr. Clark?
It is, Your Honor. Just to clarify just that much further. The sentence contemplated in paragraph 3 of the agreement is the sentence, and that full sentence would be intended to be binding.
All right. Mr. Crane, is that your understanding as well?
It is, Your Honor.
And Mr. White, is that your understanding as well?
Yes, it is.
All right. Mr. White, is that the plea agreement that you've entered into with the state today?
Yes.
And Mr. Clark, is that the plea agreement you've entered into with the defendant?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. White, do you have any questions about that at this time?
No, I don't.
All right, Mr. White, I have some questions for your counsel, and then I'll come back to you. You're fine just for a minute. Mr. Crane, do you feel like you've had sufficient time to discuss this matter with your client?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. White, I have some questions for you, and then following that, I'll have you be placed under oath if you remain seated. Do you understand, sir, that you have the right to remain silent in this case?
Yes, I do.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you give up that right to remain silent?
Yes.
You also understand that as part of this change of plea process, I'll be asking what it is that makes you guilty of this crime.
Yes, I do.
And you understand that the court will use whatever information you give me against you at the time of sentencing, as well as other future hearings, for example, if you attempt to withdraw your guilty plea.
Yes.
Do you have any questions about that?
No.
Is this your desire to change your plea today to guilty?
Yes.
All right, let me have you stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in by Madam Clerk.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this pending cause should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You can go ahead and be seated. I'd rather we pick that up on the microphone. You don't have to speak into it. It's clear enough. You're okay. Can you please state your full name for the record?
Jeremy James White,
How old are you?
40,
How far did you go in school?
11th grade.
Do you have a GED or?
Yes, I have GED.
All right. Can you hear and understand me today?
Yes.
Are you addicted to drugs or alcohol?
Yes.
Are you under the influence today of alcohol, drugs, controlled substance or any prescription medication?
No.
Do you have any psychological or mental problems that would impair or hurt your ability to understand what is happening here today?
No.
Are you currently on probation or parole?
No.
Are you a United States citizen?
Yes.
As to what you're going to be pleading guilty to today, do you recall what that charge is?
Yes.
What is that?
Second-degree murder.
Do you recall the possible penalties?
Yes.
What are those?
15 years fixed, 35, 15, I don't know the exact wording, but it's 15,
That's-
35.
That's what the plea agreement is. The court has to make sure that you understand the possible penalties.
Oh, yes.
What are the possible penalties?
I believe I think it's a maximum of 25.
Maximum up to life in prison
Okay.
with a minimum of 10 years. There's also up to a maximum of a $50,000 fine, as well as up to a $5,000 compensatory fine, as well as restitution. Do you have any questions about those possible penalties?
No, I understand
All right. Do you have any questions about the plea agreement that we've already gone over?
that. No.
Now, we've discussed it in detail that this is a binding plea agreement. Let me explain how that works. The court, if I accept your guilty plea today, I will order what's called a pre-sentence investigation report. It'll have on it information about you, your criminal history, education history, employment history, family history, as well as details about the crime in this case. If after reading that report, I feel that something different should be done other than this binding plea agreement, the court would allow you to withdraw your guilty plea, and you would come back to basically where we are now, and we would reschedule this matter for a trial. You understand that?
Yes, I do.
The court is not going to make a determination if I feel that this plea agreement is appropriate until after I've had a chance to both review the pre-sentence investigation report as well as hear argument. You understand that?
Yes.
But as indicated, if the court does not follow the plea agreement, you would be entitled to withdraw your guilty plea. Do you have any questions about that?
No.
All right. Do you feel like you've had sufficient time to discuss this matter with your attorney?
Yes.
Have you discussed with your attorney all relevant information, including any possible witnesses or possible defenses you feel you might have?
Yes.
Have you had an opportunity to look at or review the state's evidence against you in this case?
Yes.
Is there anything you've requested your attorney do in this matter that he has not done?
No.
And are you fully satisfied with the representation you've received from your attorney up to this point?
Yes, I am.
Has anyone coerced or pressured you into pleading guilty here today?
No.
Has anyone promised you that I'd be easy on you or place you on probation if you pled guilty?
No.
Has anyone intimidated or threatened you or anyone close to you to get you to plead guilty?
No.
Has anyone offered you a reward of any kind other than the plea agreement to have you plead guilty?
No.
Is it fair to say that you are pleading guilty here today freely and voluntarily?
Yes.
It's indicated the court will order that you comply with the pre-sentence investigation report process. Do you have any questions about that?
No.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty here today, we're not going to have a trial?
Yes.
You will have waived your right to a trial, your right to confront your accusers, as well as present evidence on your own behalf.
Yes.
You also understand that by pleading guilty, you give up any possible defenses you feel you might have in this case.
Yes.
You also understand that by pleading guilty, you become a convicted felon and will lose certain constitutional rights.
Yes.
Now is the time to enter your plea. If you have any questions for the court or for your attorney, or if you need any additional time before entering a plea, I could give you more time. Do you need to take any more time?
No, I have no questions.
All right. Then Mr. Jeremy James White, the charge of murder in the second degree as contained in the prosecuting attorney's information, how do you plead?
Guilty.
Can you tell me what it is or what you did to make you guilty of that crime?
I had an argument with Christin Caldwell, and I willfully strangled her knowing that that would take her life from her.
Now, the information indicates that you strangled her on or about November 7th, 2016. Would that date be correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And did you commit that act in Bonneville County in the state of Idaho?
Yes.
And did that, in fact, kill the victim in this case?
Yes, he did.
Mr. Clark, do you find with the elocution?
Yes,
Court finds that the defendant is competent in understanding both the nature of the offense as well as the consequences of the plea of guilty to that offense. The court also finds there is a factual basis for the guilty plea, and I conclude that it was knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily made. Therefore, I will accept the guilty plea to the charge. We'll direct Madam Clerk to enter on the record, and we will schedule this matter for sentencing. Let me ask counsel a standard setting out, or how would you like to proceed?
Your Honor, we'd ask the court to set it out further than usual. Maybe probably block an hour and a half, just to be safe. I don't know how much time with the binding plea agreement, but just to be safe, I think.
No, I recommend 10 weeks.
All right. Mr. Crane?
That sounds good, Your Honor.
All right. The court's going to schedule at least 2 hours for the hearing. Is that going to be adequate, Mr. Clark?
I think so.
September 20th at 10 a.m.
Mr. Crane?
That works for the defense, Your Honor.
Mr. Clark?
At this point, Your Honor, I think that'll be fine. We'll let the court know. We'll let counsel know if there's any issue with that.
All right. Mr. Crane, I know you're familiar with what the court would typically order for a sentencing as far as evaluations. Based upon what you need to prepare for sentencing, or Mr. Clark, are there other evaluations you feel like you might need for this?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
All right. Let me indicate then that the standard assessments under 1925-24 will be accomplished. If there are any other issues, either they will address them with the court or you can, Mr. Crane. Mr. White, I'm signing an order for a pre-sentence investigation report. You're going to get a copy of that right now. The Department of Probation and Parole will be in contact with you. You will see that order signed right there. There's a couple of sheets I need to have you fill out. The first one, let me have you look at those. The first one is a pre-sentence investigation face sheet, just some basic information that will help them prepare that pre-sentence investigation report.
Okay.
The next one, that's a copy of the order, Mr. Crane? Okay, that's just a copy of the court's order that I've just signed. The information behind that green sheet is the information that the Department of Probation and Parole will use to prepare that pre-sentence investigation report. So the first one I need to have you fill out today, probably downstairs before you leave.
Okay.
Just make sure that it gets to the marshal. The other information behind the green sheet you can fill out sometime. It just needs to be before the Department of Probation and Parole meets with you to prepare that report.
Okay.
If you have any questions about that, you can and should consult with Mr. Crane. All right. Anything else you need to take up today, Mr. Crane?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Clark?
No, Your Honor.
All right. At this point, then, we'll be in recess on this case, except let me indicate I appreciate that both the staff and law enforcement has remained. That will typically be ours, as well as the attorneys. I appreciate the work that's gone into this. And we'll be in recess on this matter until the next day. Thank you.
Please rise.